Boss fired me and said, "You're not a good culture fit anymore," then replaced me with his cousin I trained for 1 year. I still remember the day I first walked into Next Level Technologies. The office smelled of fresh paint and ambition. It was 2017, and the company was just 15 people crammed into a renovated warehouse space. Everyone fueled by energy drinks and the promise that we were building something special. Marcus, the CEO, had personally recruited me after seeing my work at a competitor. "Alex," he'd said, leaning back in his chair during my interview, "I don't just need someone to run operations. I need someone who can build a foundation this company can grow on for years." Those words became my mission statement. For 6 years I poured everything into Next Level. I built the operations department from scratch, developed our project management systems, and created training programs that became the company's backbone. My wife joked that Next Level was my mistress, stealing my nights, weekends, and even our anniversary 1 year when a major client server crashed. "It won't always be like this," I promised her, massaging her shoulders as I stepped in at midnight, still answering emails on my phone. "Once we're established, things will calm down." But they never did, because the more I gave, the more the company grew, and the more it needed from me. By year 3 we had expanded to 50 employees. By year 5, over 100, and I was the connective tissue. The person who knew how every department functioned, who could troubleshoot any crisis, who remembered everyone's birthdays and coffee preferences. When Marcus's cousin Kyle joined the company, he was fresh out of business school. All theory, no practical experience. His resume was thin, but his family connection was thick. I understood the politics. Family businesses have their own gravity, so when Marcus asked me to show Kyle the ropes, I did what I always did. I said yes. For a year, Kyle shadowed me like a second skin. He sat in on my meetings, watched me handle difficult clients, observed how I managed team conflicts. I shared everything, my processes, my spreadsheets, my hard-earned wisdom. "Man, I don't know how you keep all this straight," Kyle said one evening, as we worked late, his feet propped on my desk while I finalized quarterly projections. "You're like the wizard behind the curtain around here." I laughed. "No wizardry, just systems and relationships. Remember that, this business runs on both." He nodded thoughtfully, jotting something in his moleskin notebook. I felt a flash of pride. Maybe I was finally getting through to him. The warning signs were there, though I chose to ignore them. The private lunches between Kyle and Marcus, the gradual exclusion from strategic meetings, the subtle shift in how information flowed. Suddenly I was the last to know about major decisions. "Politics," my colleague Jenna warned me one day at the coffee machine. "Kyle's been telling people he has ideas for modernizing operations." Whatever that means, I brushed it off. "He's welcome to try. This isn't exactly my first rodeo." My confidence seemed justified. After all, I had built this department. The team trusted me. We had weathered crises together, celebrated victories, grown into a unit that operated like a well-oiled machine. They weren't just colleagues, they were my work family. So when Marcus's assistant Diane messaged me that the CEO wanted to see me on a quiet Friday afternoon, I assumed it was about the upcoming expansion plans. I grabbed my tablet and headed to his corner office, nodding at teammates as I passed their desks. Marcus's office had changed over the years. What started as a modest space with second-hand furniture had evolved into a glass-walled showcase with custom hardwood shelving and awards lining the walls. Many earned through projects I had spearheaded. "Alex, have a seat." Marcus didn't look up from his laptop immediately. When he finally did, his expression was carefully neutral. "We need to talk about your future with Next Level." Something in his tone made my stomach tighten. "Sure. Is this about the Chicago expansion? Because I've been working on staffing projections?" "No," he closed his laptop with a decisive click. "This is about fit." "Fit?" I repeated, the word feeling foreign in my mouth. "The company is evolving," Marcus continued, his fingers forming a steeple under his chin. "We're moving in new directions. Younger demographics, more aggressive growth strategies, different energy." I stared at him, trying to process what he was saying beneath what he was saying. "I've led some of our most aggressive growth initiatives." "Yes. And we appreciate that. But after careful consideration, we've determined that you're not a good culture fit anymore." The words hung in the air like smoke. Not a good culture fit? After 6 years? After building the culture? Is this a joke? The question escaped before I could contain it. Marcus's expression hardened. "No, Alex. It's business. The company needs fresh perspectives, new approaches. We're offering a generous severance package. 3 months salary plus benefits continuation. Diane has the paperwork ready." My mind raced, searching for the real reason behind this sudden decision. Is there something specific that prompted this? Performance issues you haven't mentioned? Because if there are areas where I need to improve, the decision is final. Marcus stood up, signaling the end of the conversation. "You'll need to clear out your desk today. I will supervise to ensure all company data remains secure." Just like that. 6 years reduced to a cardboard box and an escort out. I went through the motions like an automaton. Signed the papers, declined Diane's tearful hug, packed my belongings under the watchful eye of Rick from IT, the same Rick I'd hired 3 years ago. Word spread quickly. As I packed, colleagues stopped by, confusion and concern on their faces. Jenna squeezed my shoulder. "This is wrong," she whispered. "Everyone knows it." My team watched in stunned silence. My senior project manager, looked like she might cry. "What happens to the department now?" she asked. I had no answer. So I just kept packing. The family photos, the desk plant that had survived against all odds, the stack of thank you cards from team members and clients that I'd kept in my drawer. The final indignity came a week later. I'd forgotten my ergonomic keyboard, a gift from the team on my 5th work anniversary. I swallowed my pride and returned to retrieve it. The security guard, another person I'd hired, looked uncomfortable as he handed me a visitor badge. "Just for the keyboard, right, Alex?" "Just the keyboard," I confirmed. I took the elevator to the 4th floor. When the doors opened, I found myself staring directly at the operations department. My department, through the glass partition, I could see Kyle sitting at my desk wearing a button-down shirt similar to ones I often wore, talking animatedly to my team, my chair, my space, my people. Kyle spotted me and froze mid-sentence. The team turned, following his gaze. Their expressions transformed from professional attentiveness to shock, then something like collective guilt. I could have made a scene. Part of me wanted to. Instead, I walked to my former desk, picked up my keyboard, nodded silently to the team, and walked out. It wasn't until I reached my car that I realized my hands were shaking. 6 years. Countless late nights, missed dinners, with my wife. All the times I'd chosen the company over my own well-being. For what? As I drove home, one thought kept circling in my mind. If I wasn't a culture fit at the company I helped build, then perhaps it was time to create a culture that would fit me. I just didn't realize then how many others would want to join me. The first week after being fired passed in a blur. I spent most days in sweatpants, alternating between applying for jobs and staring at the ceiling fan, trying to make sense of what had happened. My wife, Elena, gave me space but kept me anchored with gentle reminders to eat and the occasional reassuring squeeze of my shoulder as she passed by. "You'll bounce back," she said one evening, curling beside me on the couch. "Companies would be lucky to have you." I nodded, not quite believing it yet. The rejection still felt raw, like a physical wound I couldn't help but prod to see if it still hurt. It did. I had resolved to move on quietly and professionally. No bad-mouthing next level. No bitter social media posts. No burning bridges. I would rebuild my career elsewhere, carrying the lessons but leaving the bitterness behind. Then my phone buzzed with a text from May. "Can we talk, off the record?" We met at a coffee shop 3 blocks from Next Level. May arrived looking exhausted, dark circles beneath her eyes. "It's chaos," she said without preamble, clutching her latte like a lifeline. "Kyle's changing everything. Our project tracking system, client communication protocols, even the weekly status meeting format." I kept my expression neutral. "Change can be good. Not this kind." May leaned forward. "He's dismantling everything that worked, and when anyone questions him, he says we need to embrace the future or that we're resistant to innovation." "But Alex," her voice dropped, "he doesn't understand the foundations. You were the reason I stayed at Next Level through the pandemic, through my mom's illness. You built something special. I swallowed hard. I appreciate that. It's not just me, she continued. The whole team feels it. Kyle's all flash, no substance. I should have changed the subject, but instead I asked, how's Marcus taking it? Oblivious? Or pretending to be? She checked her watch. I should get back. I just needed you to know that what happened wasn't right. 3 days later, Jenna called. Then Rick from IT. Then 2 junior project managers. Each conversation followed a similar pattern. Things were falling apart. Kyle was in over his head. The culture was changing for the worse. I listened without commenting, careful not to encourage complaints or disloyalty. These people had jobs to protect. I wouldn't make their professional lives harder, no matter how validating their support felt. But then something unexpected happened. Devin, one of our top project managers, called on a Tuesday evening. I quit today, he announced, without preamble. You what? Why? Devon had been at Next Level almost as long as I had. He had a family, a mortgage. Couldn't take it anymore. Kyle took credit for my work on the Westridge account, then blamed me when the timeline slipped. But that's not why I'm calling. He paused. I've got 3 interviews lined up already. But I'd rather work with you again. Devin, I don't have a company. Maybe you should. A week later, May resigned. Then Jenna. By the end of the month, 5 key team members had walked out of Next Level. None of them asked directly to join me. They knew I had nothing to offer yet. But each conversation ended with some version of the same sentiment. If you ever start something, call me first. I was in the grocery store when I received a text that changed everything. It was from Larissa, our most talented UX designer. Kyle just made me rewrite an entire user interface the night before client delivery, because it didn't pop enough. I'm done. 6 of us are meeting at Riverfront Brewing tonight to decompress. You should come. I hesitated. This felt dangerously close to celebrating others' misfortune. But curiosity won out. The group that gathered that evening represented the core of what had been Next Level's strongest talent. As I approached their table, the conversation halted, then erupted in greetings that felt more like a homecoming than a casual meetup. There he is, the legend himself. We were just talking about you. Over craft beers and shared appetizers, I heard the full story of Next Level's rapid decline. Projects were stalling, clients were frustrated. Kyle's inexperience was becoming increasingly evident, but Marcus refused to acknowledge it. You should have seen the Anderson pitch, Larissa said, shaking her head. Kyle presented your strategy deck, but he didn't understand any of the methodology behind it. When they asked questions, he kept saying he'd circle back. I didn't want to feel satisfaction at their struggles, but something else was building inside me, a realization that what I'd built had mattered. These people, these talented professionals, had valued not just what I did but how I did it. You know what's crazy? Devin said, leaning back in his chair. Between the people at this table, we have every skill needed to start a company. The table went quiet. I'm serious, he continued. Alex's operational expertise, Jenna's sales background, May's project management skills, Larissa's design talent, Rick's technical knowledge. We're a ready-made team. A team without a company, I pointed out. For now, May said quietly, her eyes meeting mine. But that could change. As I drove home that night, their words echoed in my head. I had been so focused on what I'd lost that I hadn't considered what might be possible. These weren't just former colleagues commiserating, they were offering something precious, a second chance, built on genuine loyalty. My phone buzzed with a group text from Devin. This isn't just about escaping a bad situation, it's about building something better. For the first time since Marcus had called me into his office, I felt a spark of something that wasn't anger or hurt or confusion. It was possibility. My garage had never been particularly organized, but now it was barely functional as a garage at all. We'd pushed my sedan onto the driveway to make room for a collection of mismatched desks, chairs salvaged from thrift stores, and enough computer equipment to make any IT department jealous. Extension cords snaked across the concrete floor, connected to power strips that Rick had assured me wouldn't cause a fire. Probably. It's not exactly Silicon Valley, I said, surveying our makeshift headquarters with a mix of pride and apprehension. Silicon Valley is overrated, Devon replied, setting up his dual monitors. This is authentic, gritty. Every great company has an origin story like this. I wasn't convinced, but his enthusiasm was contagious. Within 3 weeks of that fateful night at Riverfront Brewing, 6 of us had committed to building something new. Devin and May had resigned immediately. Jenna and Larissa gave notice the following week. Rick stayed at Next Level just long enough to download legally all the project templates and process documents he had created. We pooled our severance packages and savings to fund this venture. My garage became our headquarters, not out of some romantic notion of startup culture, but because we couldn't afford office space yet. Elena, always my strongest supporter, brought us coffee and sandwiches that first morning. "So, what exactly are you building?" she asked, perching on a workbench. It was a fair question. We had talent, drive, and determination, but our vision was still fuzzy. "We know what we're not building," I answered. "We're not creating another Next Level." That afternoon, we held our first official strategy session, clustered around a whiteboard propped against my tool cabinet. I uncapped a marker and wrote at the top, "What did Marcus get wrong?" For 2 hours, we dissected Next Level's flaws, not out of bitterness, but as an anatomy lesson. The nepotism, the lack of transparency, the gap between marketing promises and operational reality, the tendency to chase growth at the expense of quality. "So we're the anti-Next Level?" Larissa asked, sketching logo concepts in her notebook. "That feels reactive, not proactive." She was right. We needed to define ourselves by what we stood for, not just what we opposed. "What if," May suggested quietly, "we build a company where leadership actually means something, where it's about serving the team, not just giving orders?" Something clicked. I wrote on the whiteboard, "Leadership is service." I've been sitting on ideas for years, I admitted. Projects and approaches Marcus dismissed as too risky or not flashy enough. I pulled out a folder from my desk drawer, printouts of proposals I'd developed, but never been allowed to implement. A client management system built around long-term relationships rather than quick wins. A professional development framework that rewarded mentorship and knowledge sharing. A project methodology that prioritized sustainable quality over burnout-inducing sprints. Marcus called these nice-to-haves. I explained. He was focused on what looked good in pitch meetings, not what created actual value. Devin leafed through the proposals, nodding. "These are solid. This is the foundation we need." We worked late into the night, fueled by pizza and possibility. By midnight, we had a business plan, a service model, and the beginnings of a name. TrueCore Solutions, Jenna suggested. Because we're focused on what truly matters, the core of good business. The name resonated immediately. It captured everything we wanted to be: authentic, foundational, essential. Within days, we had registered the business, created email addresses, and designed a simple but elegant website. Rick worked magic with minimal resources, setting up systems that looked and functioned far more professionally than our garage headquarters suggested. What we lacked in funding, we made up for in determination and expertise. Our first client came through Jenna's network, a small manufacturing company, frustrated with their current tech provider. "They want to meet at our office," she reported after the initial call. We looked around the garage with its concrete floor and visible insulation. "That's not happening," May said. "I have an idea," Larissa chimed in. "My brother manages that co-working space downtown. We could book a conference room, make it look like we're working from there." It was our first test, pretending to be bigger than we were. But when the potential client arrived, something unexpected happened. Instead of hiding our startup status, I found myself being transparent. "We're new," I admitted, "but our team has decades of combined experience. What we lack in corporate infrastructure, we make up for in personal attention and expertise. You won't be getting junior staff or becoming just another account number." To my surprise, they signed with us that day. "Your honesty was refreshing," their COO told me. "We've had enough of slick pitches that don't deliver." As we celebrated our first contract that evening, Devon raised his coffee mug in a toast. "To honesty as a business strategy," he said. "And to Marcus," May added, with a sly smile, "for creating the perfect what not to do manual." We laughed, but there was truth in her words. Everything Marcus had dismissed, transparency, genuine relationships, sustainable processes, was becoming our competitive advantage. Within a month we had 3 clients and were outgrowing the garage. Within 2, we were actually turning a profit. Small but real. We weren't building a company to get revenge. We were building a company worth believing in. And people were starting to notice. 3 months into our TrueCore venture, we'd moved from my garage to a modest office space downtown. Nothing fancy, exposed brick walls, second-hand furniture we'd refinished ourselves, and a constantly brewing pot of coffee, but it was ours. Each morning I'd unlock the door and feel a surge of pride watching our small team file in, energized and purposeful. We weren't focused on next level anymore. We had our own clients, our own challenges, our own vision to pursue. I had stopped checking their social media or website. The wound was healing. Then Anita Chen called. Anita was Next Level's Human Resources Director, a straight-talking professional who'd been with the company since before I arrived. Seeing her name on my caller ID sent an unexpected jolt through me. "Alex," she said when I answered, her voice hushed. "I probably shouldn't be calling you. Is everything okay?" I asked, stepping into our small conference room for privacy. "I'm resigning tomorrow," she said without preamble. "I wanted you to know things are not good here." For the next 20 minutes, Anita painted a picture of Next Level's rapid decline. Kyle had proven disastrously unprepared for leadership. Projects were running months behind schedule. 3 major clients had already terminated their contracts. The development team was in open revolt against what they called management by whim. Yesterday, Kyle announced a company-wide pivot to blockchain solutions, Anita said, the exasperation clear in her voice. "We don't have a single developer with blockchain experience." I listened in silence, unsure how to respond. Part of me felt a dark satisfaction, vindication that I hadn't been the problem. Another part felt genuine sadness for the company I'd helped build and the people still trapped there. "Why are you telling me this?" I finally asked. "Because you deserved better," she replied simply. "And because I'm not the only one leaving. There's going to be an exodus." She was right. Over the next 2 weeks, my phone lit up with texts and calls from former colleagues I hadn't even been close with. Developers, account managers, even the office manager who'd organized the company picnics. All leaving Next Level, all sharing stories of chaos and mismanagement. We hired 3 of them. The ones whose skills we needed and whose values aligned with our growing culture. The others we helped connect with opportunities elsewhere. It wasn't about poaching talent, it was about helping good people find soft landings. Then came the call that changed everything. "Is this Alex Mercer?" The voice belonged to Howard Gregson, CEO of Visionary Healthcare Systems. Next Level's biggest client for the past 4 years. I'd worked closely with Howard on their digital transformation project, spending countless late nights ensuring their complex needs were met. "Yes, speaking," I replied, surprised. "I've been trying to reach you for weeks," Howard said. "Look, I'll be blunt. Next Level is dropping the ball left and right. Our latest implementation is 6 weeks behind schedule, and no one can give me straight answers. My board is breathing down my neck." My heart raced. "I'm sorry to hear that, Howard, but I'm no longer with Next Level." "I know that," he said impatiently. "That's why I'm calling. Word is you've started your own shop. We need someone who understands our systems, and frankly, I trust you more than I trust the cousin." The opportunity was massive, potentially company-making for TrueCore, but it also felt uncomfortably close to profiting directly from Next Level's failure. "I'd need to think about this," I said carefully. "There are ethical considerations." "Alex," Howard interrupted, "I respect your integrity. It's why I called you, but this isn't about Next Level anymore. This is about my company potentially losing millions if this implementation fails. We're prepared to terminate our contract with them, regardless of whether you take us on." After discussing it with the team, we agreed to meet with Howard. We didn't promise to take on the work, only to evaluate whether we could help without creating legal vulnerabilities for ourselves. The meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Monday evening, my phone rang again. It was Marcus. "You're poaching my people and my clients," he said without greeting. His voice tight with barely controlled fury. "I haven't poached anyone," I replied calmly. "People are leaving because they're unhappy. As for clients, they make their own decisions." "Bullshit," he spat. "You've been planning this since you left. This is sabotage. Is that why you're calling, Marcus? To accuse me of something I haven't done?" There was a long pause. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Less angry, more defeated. Look, maybe we can work something out. A partnership. Your team handles the visionary healthcare project, and we split the revenue. The offer stunned me. Marcus wasn't just admitting they were in trouble, he was desperate. I don't think that would work, I said quietly. Why not? There was an edge of pleading in his voice now. Because we have different values, I answered. That was true when you fired me, and it's still true now. After we hung up, I sat motionless, processing what had just happened. The mighty Next Level, the company that had deemed me no longer a culture fit, was now reaching out for rescue. The next day, Visionary Healthcare signed with TrueCore. Within a week, 2 more former Next Level clients followed. We weren't actively pursuing Next Level's client base. We didn't need to. They were finding us on their own, drawn by the reputation our team had built over years. A reputation for competence, integrity, and follow-through that had nothing to do with company names or office addresses. It wasn't revenge. It was the natural consequence of values in action. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by courier, rather than regular mail, Marcus's way of signaling its importance. Urgent legal correspondence stamped across the front in bold red letters. Devon whistled blow when I placed it on the conference table during our morning meeting. Somebody's not happy. Inside was a cease and desist letter from Next Level's attorneys, accusing TrueCore of systematic employee poaching, tortious interference with business relationships, and misappropriation of proprietary company information. The letter demanded we immediately cease all contact with current Next Level employees and clients, return all stolen intellectual property, and pay damages of $1 million. Mia read it over my shoulder, her expression darkening. This is ridiculous. We haven't done anything wrong. It's a scare tactic, Jenna added. They're hoping we'll fold because we can't afford to fight. They were right, but the letter still sent a chill through me. Legal battles could drain our modest resources quickly, even if we were in the right. Marcus knew that. We need a lawyer, I said, reaching for my phone. Patricia Okafor had been Next Level's outside counsel during my tenure there. I'd always respected her pragmatic approach and ethical stance, even when it meant telling Marcus things he didn't want to hear. She'd left the firm 6 months ago to start her own practice. I was wondering when I'd hear from you, Patricia said when I explained the situation. I've been following TrueCore's rise with interest. Can you represent us? I asked. Or is there a conflict because you worked with Next Level? I never had a non-compete, and the matters I handled for them aren't related to these claims, she replied. Send me the letter and any documentation you have about employee departures and client acquisitions. And Alex, don't panic. Bullies send scary letters because they're afraid. Over the next 3 days, we compiled comprehensive timelines showing every employee who had joined us had resigned voluntarily, most citing specific issues in their exit interviews. We documented that we had never solicited Next Level clients. They had approached. We showed that all our processes and systems had been built from scratch or using open source tools. Nothing proprietary to Next Level. Patricia crafted a response that was both professional and devastating, concluding with, should Next Level pursue these baseless claims, TrueCore will file a countersuit for defamation and tortious interference with our business relationships. We suggest your client focus on addressing the internal issues causing their talent exodus rather than targeting a competitor for their own failings. We never heard back from Next Level's attorneys. 3 weeks later came the real test. Tech Fusion, the industry's largest annual conference. Both Next Level and TrueCore had booked exhibitor booths, something we'd arranged months earlier before this escalation. By cruel coincidence or deliberate planning on the part of the conference organizers, our booths were directly across from each other. We could request a location change, Larissa suggested during our pre-conference planning session. No, I decided after a moment's consideration. We have nothing to hide or be ashamed of. We'll proceed as planned. We arrived early on the first day, setting up our modest but professional booth. Our design reflected our values: clean, transparent, focused on solutions rather than flash. We had no giveaway tchotchkes, no flashy demonstrations, just screens showing our project management approach and case studies from satisfied clients. Next Level's team arrived an hour later, a much larger group, with elaborate displays, branded stress balls, and a coffee bar. Marcus supervised the setup personally, studiously avoiding looking in our direction. Kyle stood at his side, nodding at whatever Marcus was saying, but his eyes kept darting toward our booth. When our gazes met briefly, he quickly looked away. As the conference doors opened and attendees began flooding in, something unexpected happened. People we'd worked with over the years, clients from other companies, vendors, even competitors stopped by our booth first, greeting us warmly, expressing surprise and delight at finding us with our own company. I heard what happened at Next Level, one longtime client contact told me, lowering her voice. Their loss, obviously. Are you taking on new projects? By mid-morning, our booth was consistently busy. Across the aisle, Next Level's elaborate setup attracted attention, but seemed to generate fewer meaningful conversations. I caught Marcus watching us, his expression unreadable. The pivotal moment came after lunch. Andrea Wells, CTO of Globex Systems, one of the industry's most sought-after clients, spent 30 minutes at our booth asking detailed questions about our approach. As she was leaving, she shook my hand firmly. I like what I'm hearing, she said, loud enough to carry. Let's schedule a proper meeting next week. Marcus chose that moment to approach, Kyle trailing behind him like a shadow. Andrea? Marcus called. All smiles. I didn't know you were attending, we should catch up. Andrea's expression cooled noticeably. Marcus? Actually, I was just finishing up with TrueCore. They have some interesting ideas about the integration challenges we've been facing. Marcus's smile became fixed. We have some innovative approaches to those same issues. Kyle here has been developing a proprietary framework. I'm familiar with Kyle's work, Andrea interrupted, her tone making it clear that this wasn't a compliment. She turned back to me. Thursday at 2 works for me. Have your team send the details. As she walked away, the three of us stood in awkward silence. Marcus's face had flushed dark red. Kyle stared at the floor, shoulders hunched. Congratulations, Marcus finally said, his voice tight. You've built quite a reputation. We just focus on doing good work, I replied evenly. He nodded once, then turned away, murmuring something to Kyle as they retreated to their booth. As I watched them go, I realized something important. I no longer felt anger toward Marcus, or even Kyle. What I felt was closer to pity. They were trapped in the consequences of their own choices, just as we were benefiting from ours. The rest of the conference unfolded like a victory lap we hadn't planned. Former colleagues stopped by, some to job hunt, others just to reconnect. Current Next Level employees visited surreptitiously, business cards exchanged with knowing looks. Kyle spent most of the time at the back of Next Level's booth, avoiding eye contact with everyone, especially me. 18 months after being told I wasn't a good culture fit, I stood in the entrance of TrueCore's new headquarters, watching the morning sunlight pour through floor-to-ceiling windows. At 60 employees and growing, we'd outgrown our previous space and invested in a converted warehouse that reflected our values, open, transparent, with private spaces for focus work and collaborative areas designed for connection. Devon sidled up beside me, coffee mug in hand. Remember the garage? I laughed. How could I forget? You almost electrocuted yourself setting up that server rack. Worth it, he replied, gesturing around us. All of this worth every minute. The journey from that first desperate garage setup to here hadn't been easy. We'd faced cash flow challenges, grueling project deadlines, and the growing pains that come with rapid expansion. But we'd stayed true to our founding principles: leadership as service, transparency as strength, quality over flash. Our reputation had spread beyond former Next Level clients and contacts. We now had a waiting list of prospective clients and an even longer list of job applicants. People sought us out not just for what we did, but for how we did it. May approached with a tablet in hand. The quarterly numbers are finalized. Want to see? The figures exceeded our projections by 22%. More importantly, our client retention rate stood at 98%, and employee satisfaction scores were among the highest in the industry. Should we pop champagne? May asked with a grin. Let's wait for the afternoon all hands, I suggested. Share the good news with everyone at once. That afternoon, as I prepared for the meeting, Jenna knocked on my office door. You need to see this, she said, placing her phone on my desk. It was a press release. Next Level Technology, acquired by Pinnacle Group in strategic restructuring. The release was full of corporate euphemisms, synergistic integration, market recalibration, leadership transition, but the truth was clear between the lines. Next Level had been absorbed into a larger company, its brand to be phased out, its remaining assets redistributed. Marcus? I asked quietly. Leaving to pursue other opportunities, Jenna quoted from the release. Kyle too. I leaned back in my chair, unsure how to feel. There was no triumph in seeing the company I had helped build disappear. Just a hollow recognition that actions have consequences, in business as in life. What do you want to do about this? Jenna asked. Nothing, I decided after a moment. This isn't about them anymore, it's about us. At the all-hands meeting, I didn't mention Next Level's fate. Instead, I focused on what TrueCore had achieved and where we were headed. As I spoke about our values and vision, I looked at the faces around me, not just the original team from the garage, but dozens of professionals who had chosen to join our journey. Some had followed us from Next Level, but many more had come from other companies, drawn by our reputation and culture. Each brought unique talents and perspectives that had made us stronger. Leadership isn't about titles, I told them. It's not about corner offices or who reports to whom. True leadership is about service, creating an environment where others can do their best work and grow into their full potential. After the meeting, as people mingled over celebratory drinks, Elena arrived to join us. She'd been my rock through the darkest days after my firing, believing in me when I struggled to believe in myself. Proud of you, she whispered, squeezing my hand, though I don't miss the garage office. The house smelled like pizza and anxiety for months. Later that evening, as the gathering wound down, Rick approached, looking uncharacteristically somber. I just got a text from Anita, he said. Kyle reached out to her, asking if she knows anyone hiring. Apparently Pinnacle didn't keep him on after the acquisition. I nodded, absorbing this. Is he qualified for anything we have open? Rick's eyebrows shot up. You'd consider hiring him? After everything? I don't know, I admitted, but holding grudges takes energy we could use for better things. As it turned out, the question became moot. Kyle never applied. I heard through industry channels that he'd left tech altogether, joining his father's real estate business in another state. Marcus, however, did reach out, not seeking a job but closure. We met for coffee 6 months after Next Level's acquisition. I made a mistake, he said simply, looking older and tired. With you? With the company, with a lot of things. We all make mistakes, I replied. What matters is what we learn from them. What I've learned, he said with a rueful smile, is that culture isn't about ping-pong tables or happy hours. It's about trust, integrity. The things you always prioritize that I dismissed as soft skills. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was something. When we parted, there was a weight lifted that I hadn't realized I was still carrying. Today, TrueCore has 60 employees, and counting. A wait list of clients eager to work with us, and a reputation as one of the best places to work in the industry. We've won awards for innovation, client satisfaction, and workplace culture. I never got a formal apology from Marcus. But I got something better, the validation of building something meaningful. Something that reflects values worth believing in, and the joy of watching people thrive in an environment built on trust and respect. Leadership isn't a title, it's a legacy you leave behind in people. And looking at what we've built together, I can say with confidence, that legacy is secure.